nights in the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken bats, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Comebacks in the night, keep dreams alive. Fighting tooth and nail just to survive. City's heartbeat echoes in our chant. Grit and glory is all we want. Brooklyn to Queens, hear the roar. From laughter to blood in every scar. Living legends made on this ground. From silence we scream, make a sound. Rising high, falling low, repeat again. Cycles of the game, addicted to the pen. Graffiti tales spray on the wall. Met saga, forever stand tall. Rivals smear, but we push on.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove right here on the channel and on X. How is everybody doing today? Hopefully everybody is getting prepared for the holiday season. And when we get closer and closer to the holiday season, we get deeper and deeper into the offseason of Major League Baseball. And we definitely got you covered throughout the offseason with Mets Hot Stove. Episode 8 today. Obviously, I'm running solo today. Chris can't join us for about a week now. But the good news is that we're going to continue to keep Hot Stove rolling here throughout the offseason, no matter if I'm not here or Chris is not here. We're going to bring you the topics, bring you the news, bring you everything you need to know about our New York Mets and what they will be doing in the offseason leading into the 2025 season. Make sure you hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't seen the video that I posted about an hour and a half ago in regards to the latest Juan Soto news, in regards to the teams that are chasing Juan Soto to give their final, I would say, productions, their final say, their final words, they're basically doing everything they can to get Juan Soto to their respected team. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. As one of our topics is about Juan Soto. But we got to get started about the non-tender deadline that passed a couple of days ago. One shocking one was former top 10 prospect Alex Ramirez. The Mets did not tender him a contract. And that was a little bit surprising considering the fact that me and Chris were, during our season preview going into this 2024 season, thought Alex Ramirez had a possibility of making his team or possibly being somewhat of a contributor in the 2024 season. And now he's no longer in the organization. And, for a guy who was in the top 100 prospects a couple of years ago, who was in the Mets top 10 a couple of years ago, it's a little bit of a shock, but he's performed so poorly over the last couple of seasons that he got thrown all the way down to the 26th ranked prospect. That was his last position in the Mets top 30 prospect list prior to the non-tender deadline, and he's officially out of the organization. And it's disappointing because there was a lot of hope within the Mets organization through multiple regimes that Alex Ramirez is going to be one of the better outfield prospects in the Mets system. And that was only a year, maybe 2 years ago, where they thought he was still going to be one of their best prospects coming through their system. And listen, this is what happens with a lot of prospects. We tend to forget as fans how many prospects actually fail in Major League Baseball. And that's why when people complain and bitch and moan in regards to, I don't want to trade this prospect, I can't trade this prospect, why would you trust this prospect, trade this prospect, this guy's untouchable. Sorry to say, but there's more often than not than more prospects are going to fail either in the minors or at the major league level than actually are going to live up to the hype or actually just become major leaguers. There's a lot of top prospects that don't end up living up to their top prospect top potential, and they're just average major league ball players. And if you looked at the non-tender list throughout baseball, there's a lot of former top prospects in there that haven't performed or haven't lived up to that level. A guy like Dylan Carlson, that was a heavily touted top prospect for the Cardinals, was non-tendered. And that is something that you just have to reiterate and put into your mind as a fan of your team, that if you want to get better and there's a trade that can possibly make you better now or even this year or in the next couple of years, you might have to think you have to think very clearly that this could be an opportunity to make your team better now. And I keep on talking about this, and you hear Yankee fans starting to talk about this more. And I want Met fans to start thinking about this more and more. And I've talked about this many times around Mets Hot Stove. I talked about it since this channel has gotten started. You can't keep on wasting years of your core players' prime years. You just can't do it, folks. You can't waste years like Lindor just gave you. You can't waste years like Nimmo gave you in 2022 or Pete Alonso gave you in 2022. You can't waste those years. You keep on wasting those years, you're going to be waiting too long for the prospects or to make your team better, to put more better players around your core to start winning. And people always start complaining about, oh, don't trade these top prospects. Don't trade this one. Don't trade that one. Yet you don't know. I don't know. And even the organization that has these players don't know if these guys are going to become big-time major leaguers. And how many core players do you need? How many more top prospects? How many more prospects do you want to fulfill? Like, you can't have a complete team, especially in New York, of prospects and guys who come up that are actually going to perform, right? We have Vientos. We have Alvarez. Pete Alonso was a prospect. You have Nimmo, right? You have those guys. You have Acuna right now. Possibility of Drew Gilbert, right? Let's just talk about the guys on the Major League roster already, right? Alvarez starting catcher. Vientos, you starting third baseman. Pete Alonso at the moment was your starting first baseman. Brandon Nimmo was your center fielder, right? Those are all guys that came through your farm system, right? That should be more than enough to satisfy the base of this Met fans that continue to complain about prospects. How many more do you need? How about getting guys that have already performed at the major league level to help this team out? And that includes the rotation. That includes certain positions that you have holes that you need to fill. That's important, right? And, I know people love to talk about, past years as well. People talk about 86, right? You talk about Darryl Strawberry's era. You talk about Doc. But what did the Mets do, right? They traded for Gary Carter. They traded for Keith Hernandez. They brought up their youth, their top prospects, but they also put veterans together, right? Even the Braves, that everybody likes to talk about the Braves. Yes, they had a lot of top prospects that got up through the system and are currently on the major league team. But what did they do, right? They traded for Murphy. They traded for Olsen. They signed Ozuna, right? They made moves, veteran moves, to help their core guys, their young core, and help them win, right? That's what you have to continue to look for, because you can't always wait and hope that these guys are going to turn out. Because sooner or later, what if Drew Gilbert is not the guy that we all expect? What if he is, but he's not here until 2026? Well, that's another year for Lindor out the window. Pete Alonso might not even be on this team. Nimmo, another year older. So you're wasting prime years of these guys that you paid a ton of money to and wasting those years. It's about time you win. Last time I checked, hold on, the Mets haven't won since 1986. When are you going to all just realize that the New York Mets need to start winning? Right? What we've been trying to do hasn't worked, right? All the Met fans that don't want to trade top prospects, has it worked? Absolutely not. Right? And I'm not saying to trade 7 of your top 10 prospects, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the Mets have to do that to be successful. They can sign all the players to add to their roster and become a very, very big contender over the next couple of years. But I find it very unlikely that the Mets aren't going to trade a couple of top prospects. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be for a pitcher. I'm not saying it's going to be for a position player. But I truly believe that David Stearns is going to make a trade in regards to certain prospects to acquire a player that's going to make your team better. Now, if that's Garrett Crochet, if that's Luis Castillo, whatever. But I talk about it. I've talked about it on Mets Hot Stove. Me and Chris talked about it. The logjam that we have up the middle in regards to our Major League roster and our top prospects, there's too many. You can't just throw them out into positions that they never played before or played very limited time playing there and expect them to perform at the highest level. How does that help your team? Because what you're doing is it's a trial and error. And if you're trying to win, if you're trying to be a contender and not trying to surprise people like the 2024 Mets surprise people, and you want to go into the season as contenders, you can't have this trial and error, right? You can't have Daniel Murphy playing left field. You can't have Lucas Duda playing left field, right? You can't keep on doing this. You can't put Mauricio in left field. You can't put Acuna in center field. I know he's played a little bit in center field, but we all know his best position is second base. So why take him out of his comfort zone and put him in somewhere where he's probably not as good and you need him to learn on the job while you're trying to win? That's not always a recipe for success. And yeah, can it work out? Sure. There's definitely a 50-50 chance. But we have to understand that there's a logjam here. We've talked about this for a couple of years. As soon as you sign Francisco Lindor, while Mauricio was in your system, while you drafted Jet Williams, while you traded for Acuna, you knew the middle of this infield, and oh, by the way, gave McNeil a contract. You knew that there's going to be a logjam. I would be shocked if Mauricio, Acuna, and Jet Williams, at least one of them, I believe, will be off this team in a trade some point this offseason. And that might come to a shock to a lot of people, but you can't keep on waiting for these guys to continue to die in the minors, possibly lose value, and letting other teams that you're contending for the playoff spots, for potential playoff games, playoff series, teams you might face in a World Series or in the playoffs, and have them get the guy that you should have got because you were scared to trade prospects. We can't keep on just being scared to trade these guys. And regardless of how they turn out, if the guy you get in return helps you win right now, who cares? Whoever you trade becomes something that they could have been for you, right? You're trading them possibly to a bad team anyway, right? If you trade, let's say the Mets try to get Garrett Crochet and Jet Williams is in there, say 3 of your top 10 prospects are in there. Are you really going to give a damn about those 3 players that are playing for the White Sox, who are probably not going to be good for the next 3 years, maybe 4, who just ended up being the worst team ever in baseball history record-wise? Why are you caring about the AL Central? That team is not going to affect you probably for another 3 or 4 years, even if you face them in the World Series. And them guys might turn out, or they could be all a disaster. How did that Mookie Betts trade work out for the Boston Red Sox? There's not one guy from that trade that is currently in the Boston Red Sox system. Organization. What does that tell you? Now, I'm not saying that that is the end all be all, right? We could trade Jet Williams and becomes an all-star. But who cares? He's playing for the White Sox. If he's actually that good, wait 6 years and sign him in free agency if you're that worried about it. How about trying to win now? Right? Isn't this the point? Why do you give Lindor a big contract? Why do you give Nimmo a big contract? Why the possibility of giving Juan Soto, Pete Alonso big contracts? Because you want to win now, but you also want to win in the future as well. And I'm sorry, I think Vientos, I think Alvarez, Nimmo, Alonso, those guys already came up through your system. That is four guys out of your 9 spots that were from your organization. You traded for Lindor, so he's basically a part of that core now. So it's 5 out of your 9 guys that are here for the long term. Maybe not Pete Alonso, maybe not. But at some point, you can't just leave them in the minors and have nowhere to put them. Because if Vientos is going to, say if you do sign Pete Alonso, that's 1 spot for 3 players. And that's second base. Acuna, Williams, Mauricio. Where are you putting these guys? And oh, by the way, even if you don't sign Alonso and you have a stopgap guy, a stopgap guy for a Ryan Clifford that might come up in 2026, or a Christian Walker, those guys don't play first base. They play the middle infield. Maybe they can play third base. We know Mauricio can play third base, but that's stopped by Vientos. So second base is the only opportunity, possibly, that's if you get rid of Jeff McNeil. But let's put McNeil in there as he's currently on this team. Guess what? Now there's 4 guys for 1 spot. And you could say, great, trade Jeff McNeil. Okay, let's trade Jeff McNeil. Let's say we get a bullpen on for him. Great. Now you got 3 guys for 1 spot. What are you going to do with the other 2 guys? You're just going to keep them in the minor leagues? Risk them getting hurt? Risk them losing value? So when you want to trade them, the value is already out of there and already gone. And I'm stating this right now on November 25th, 2024. Between Jet Williams, Luisano Acuna, and Ronnie Mauricio, one of these guys are going to be in a deal, in a package most likely, in a trade, to get somebody of very good value that's going to help this team this year and over the next couple of seasons. And mark my words, that will happen. Because it makes no sense to sign 4 guys in free agency, because that's what the Mets will have to do to build a roster, to build the rest of the lineup that they currently don't have. They have 31 guys on their 40-man roster. That is 9 spots available on the 40-man. 9. You can't do all of them with just signings, especially big signings. You're going to have to make trades. And I'd be shocked if there's not one big trade for the New York Mets. Be ready for it, guys. Just making everybody clear of it. Be ready for it, because it's probably going to happen. Even if you sign Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, and Pete Alonso, there's probably going to be a trade still. Because that's only 3 guys on a 40-man roster. You still got 6 more spots available, 7 more spots available to add to this roster. And yeah, they could be little signings here or there, but they're also going to be trades. And that's just a fact, guys. And we'll wait to see. All right, let me just give me 1 second. And yeah, and that's the other thing, guys. We got to trust Stearns here. He knows what he's doing, right? He traded for Yelich, and none of these guys on the Marlins panned out. And I don't think any of them are in the Marlins organization anymore. And I don't want to make the bad trades and just put those on a pedestal and say, look at these. Because there's trades where you traded prospects that ended up being good, and the guy that you got in return weren't so good. That was a value at the time. But more often than not, the prospects you usually trade ended up not being the guys that you thought they were going to be. And the team that got the proven player usually won that deal, even if that proven player wasn't as great as you expected on your team. and he still won that trade. So there's so many things to look at when it comes to trades, and especially prospects. But what I get annoyed about Mets fans is that they don't look at their own roster and act like there isn't a logjam in the middle of this infield. Nobody's playing shortstop for the next 6 years for the Mets organization. Acuna, shortstop. Mauricio, shortstop. Jet Williams, shortstop. They're not playing shortstop. And then you look at third base. Well, it's a possibility, but then Vientos emerged this year. So third base is out. Now, second base, yeah, definitely a question mark. McNeil is currently on this team. You are looking at McNeil being your starting second baseman at this moment because he's on the roster. He is making $15 million. But even if McNeil is traded for whatever, you still got 3 guys for one spot. And you would all say, okay, well, between Mauricio and Acuna, sure. Well, that leaves 2 guys stuck in the minor leagues. They're not going to sit there forever. I'm telling you that right now. It does not make sense. And you could say, oh, you can put one of these guys in center field. Well, you got Drew Gilbert. He's probably going to be your center field in the future. And if you do sign Juan Soto, there goes right field. So now you got Nimmo in left and Juan Soto in right field for the next 6 to 7 years together. And now you got Drew Gilbert. Let's say Acuna does play second base. Now you got Jet Williams. If you don't trade him with Ramon and Mauricio, Jet Williams is could be a center fielder, but now you have Drew Gilbert who can be your center fielder. So that still blocks guys like Jet Williams for center field. That's why it's more likely there's going to be a trade for one of these guys in a package that are up the middle as a top prospect. It just makes sense to trade one of those guys. Now, could it be the wrong guy? Sure, absolutely. But I will take a chance that the proven player we get in return for that possible potential of a top prospect will end up benefiting the Mets more than that top prospect will probably do with their other team. Because history shows it. It's rare that top prospect becomes what he's expected to be. We'll see. All right, so here we go, guys. So the non-tender, again, Alex Ramirez was the big one. Let me just pull it up here so I give you the names that are right. Alex Ramirez, once a Mets top 10 prospect, a top 100 prospect at one point, and before he was out of the Mets organization after this non-tender deadline, he was the 26th ranked prospect. So he went from top 10 all the way down to 26. A very disappointing short career of Alex Ramirez, who had a ton of potential but hasn't lived up to it in the Mets organization, and they finally part ways with Alex Ramirez. Also, Grant Hartwig didn't get tendered a deal, and Alex Young didn't get tendered a deal as well. And other guys that were tendered a deal, Blackburn, Peterson, McGill, Terrence, Siri, Taylor, and Sean Reed Foley agreed to a contract. So those are your guys that are currently on the roster still that got tendered a deal, and Sean Reed Foley actually signed a contract with the Mets. So other tender deals, they would have to work out, negotiate a contract with the team that tendered them a deal. So no other surprises there except for Alex Ramirez, that was once a top prospect in the Mets system, top 10 prospect in the Mets system. All right, guys, so it is the week of Juan Soto. Juan Soto, Juan Soto, Juan Soto. Everything revolves around Juan Soto in this offseason. And according to the reports, I just put up a video about this. If you want to check out my video after the stream is over, check it out. I go a little bit more into detail about the favorites for Juan Soto. I talk about a possible contract, what I think it's going to be. And I also talk about the latest reports that I'm going to tell you now, but I go into more detail about those reports with Juan Soto, but I'm going to briefly talk about it here. When it comes to Juan Soto, according to the reports, teams will be starting to send offers to Juan Soto. And I continue to say this, and me and Chris agreed to this on multiple hot shows already, that Juan Soto is going to make a decision right before the winter meetings or a couple days before the winter meetings, it's not going to trickle into the winter meetings. And there's many reasons for that. Number one, Scott Boras wants his biggest client to be off the board. Why? Because if he's off the board prior to the winter meetings, Scott Boras has so many other top players on the market, in particular, Corbin Burns, Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander. All these guys are Boras clients. Boras wants the big guy off the board, so there's a line of demarcation when he goes into talks with other teams, and teams see what Juan Soto got. There's kind of okay, this is what's looking like the price is going to be for certain players. Now, Pete Alonso probably has nothing to do with Soto, but Anthony Santander, who is also a right fielder, who is also an outfielder, right? Not saying he's anywhere at the level of Juan Soto, but it's a line of demarcation where teams can say, all right, you're valued at this much because Juan Soto's this much. And that's what agents do. That's what teams do. So Juan Soto, and because Scott Boras has all these clients that are at the top of the list of free agency, he wants Juan Soto off the board. And it's clear, right? There's a reason why Juan Soto met with what we know of about 6 teams. Not much more than that, right? This wasn't a across the country, let me meet with 20 teams and then I'll narrow my decision to 10, then 5, and trickle this out over the offseason. There's a reason why there's been meetings set that we know of, meetings done, and now offers are going to be coming this week. Juan Soto knows where his geography, I would say, where he wants to go. He's already chosen the teams he's willing to go to. And it's probably less than 10. I'm thinking more around 5. And most of them are on the East Coast. So it's understandable why Boras wants to end this quest for Juan Soto before the winter meetings. He has incentive to do so because of his other clients. You want to go into the winter meetings worrying about the other clients that are in the next tier of free agency below Juan Soto, especially if you represent them. Now, what is the incentive for Juan Soto making his decision before the winter meetings? Well, a few things. When Juan Soto picks the team he wants to go to, Juan Soto wants that team to make their team even better, want them to add. So if Juan Soto prolongs this stops the teams that are trying to fight for Juan Soto. They're going to not go after Anthony Santander, Corbin Burns, Pete Alonso, or other big-time free agents until the big boy is off their board. So Juan Soto wants to go to a team rather early so that team has more possibilities of adding to that team of big names and bigger and make their team better, because that's what he's talked about in all of these meetings, right? It was a big story with the Yankees that Juan Soto talked about. Well, if you sign me, what else are you going to do to improve this team? So that has been trickled around to every team, right? Juan Soto doesn't want him to sign with a team, and that team only signs him and, throw in a couple of has-beens on the team and hope for the best. He doesn't want that. So the best thing in Boras's case is before the winter meetings for Juan Soto to sign. Juan Soto's incentive is, let's get this done so the team that I sign with can do more throughout the winter meetings and throughout the offseason instead of worrying about me. And that is why this is going to be done rather quickly. I think probably a few days before the winter meetings. I think you're going to start hearing offers from teams this week, and I'm assuming it's going to be a lot of counter offers. But the last guy Scott Boras is going to call before any deal is done is to Steve Cohen. Whatever deal they think is the highest, Boras is going to call Steve Cohen and say, hey, listen, this team A, says they're going to give this much money. And Steve Cohen can raise the price or say, we're not doing it, which I find that very hard to believe. When it comes to Andy Martino, And I'm not a big fan of Andy Martino, but when he says anything positive about the Mets, listen, because it's rare. And usually when it's positive coming out of Andy Martino's mouth in regards to the Mets, it's usually true. Usually when he blurs out Yankee news and is negative towards Mets reports or players that they might be going after, it's usually either a lie or it's a little bit to kind of hinder the Mets fan into thinking that anything's going to happen for their team. When Andy Martino says something positive about the Mets, listen, because it's probably factual. It's a very good chance that it's factual. And he said it on Baseball Night in New York that he believes that Steve Cohen is going to go to $700 million or close to $700 million for Juan Soto. And I'm telling you this right now, guys. The Yankees are not doing that. The Blue Jays might, but I don't think he's going to Canada. The Red Sox might get close, but I don't think he's going to the Red Sox. So why would executives, why would GMs around the league continue to blurt out over the last week or so that they believe the Mets are the front runners, the Mets are the heavy favorites? Because a lot of people believe, and the inner circles hear it. They just had the owners' meetings. There's a reason why Hal Steinbrenner went on the defense when he was asked about battling it out with Steve Cohen in regards to Juan Soto. There's a reason for that. And why he kind of, set up his fan base, Hal Steinbrenner I'm talking about, insane. Well, yeah, I'm going to battle, but he kind of left it out there that don't be surprised if we don't retain Juan Soto. And he kind of left it out there in his quote. So it's very interesting to see, but there's so much that could happen that can lead to Juan Soto not becoming a Met. And the only thing that I can see where Juan Soto is not a Met is if Steve Cohen doesn't become the highest bidder or continues the highest bid. Because if Steve Cohen is not going to be denied every time he gets a counteroffer, because I'm telling you this right now, Scott Boras' last call is always going to be to Steve Cohen. And until Steve Cohen says no, the Mets are always going to have the highest bid. And I think a lot of people believe that, if not everybody. Now, Yankee fans, which is very funny to me, and I'd love to get a Yankee YouTuber on to discuss this, because all I heard throughout the 2024 season, look how much Juan Soto loves being a Yankee. Yankee fans are going bonkers for Juan Soto. Anytime you heard Mets and Juan Soto, Yankee fans would be like, he's not going to the Mets. He's staying a Yankee. Look how much he loves it here. Bleacher Creatures, every time they did the roll call, Juan Soto was the biggest roll call. The loudness was crazy for anybody else except for Aaron Judge. Now, why are Yankee fans so quiet? Why are they not so confident as they were throughout the season? Why weren't Yankee fans? Why aren't they clamoring for Juan Soto now? Because reality has checked in. Not only did they get embarrassed in the World Series, so that kind of, threw the Yankee fans under their shell a little bit and try to hide under their shell. But a couple of weeks after the World Series, that's when you start to hear the Yankee fans again. And usually they're confident in the players that they think they're going to re-sign. Especially Juan Soto, as confident as they were during the season, now they're not. Because they realize, especially after their owner kind of made very odd comments, saying he's like, oh yeah, I'll battle with Steve Cohen when it comes to that. We can pay anybody, but everybody knows you can't, and you won't. You talked about the $300 million luxury tax that you don't think it's sustainable. That $300 luxury tax isn't going anywhere if you sign Juan Soto. You're going to be there for the next couple of years at the very least, as you still got Stanton on the books. You got Judge's contract. Now you got Soto's contract. And it's very hard to improve your team, especially if you need more pitching, if you need a little bit of outfield help, if you need a little infield help. Now you have to add money to your payroll. But after Juan Soto, how are they really going to do that? So the Yankees are in a very peculiar spot. Now, I believe they're probably better off spending that $400 million, $500 million, maybe even $600 million elsewhere. And you could probably better your team that way. Now, I'm not a Yankee fan, so I can care less what they do. But it's eerily quiet on the Yankees front. And it's not a quiet confidence that you usually get from Yankee fans when it comes to free agency and certain players. And Juan Soto is no different. They know their owner is not going to go above and beyond. Now, he'll give a very respectable offer, but I don't want to hear Yankee fans when the Mets sign Juan Soto and hear them on Sports Talk Radio saying, oh, I didn't want Juan Soto anyway, because that's the biggest lie that I've ever heard. But we'll see. We will see. Now, I'm leaning towards about 90% that Juan Soto is going to be a Met, but I do think that 10% is the Yankees, to be quite honest. Because if Juan Soto really does take less money to go to the Yankees, I won't be mad about that. I won't be mad at Juan Soto about that. Because of the fact that I believe that when a player enjoys his time there on a team and he loves it there, I don't have a problem with a player taking less money to go to the team that he enjoyed playing for. You know, I talk about that with Pete Alonso all the time. Pete Alonso talks about loving to be a Met and wants to be a Met, yet all indications are that you're doing everything not to be a Met. So if Juan Soto sticks with the Yankees and takes less money to do so, I'll respect that, just like I respect Aaron Judge going back to the Yankees to take less money. But I think it's more of a long shot. He'll be a Yankee because of the facts that I stated. Yeah, Gabo, exactly what they're going to talk about. They're going to talk about their defense, the base running, all that stuff. Yet, if it wasn't for Juan Soto, they would not be in the World Series. They would have not. Him and Giancarlo Stanton basically carried the Yankees into the World Series. So we'll see. Well, Frank, I agree with you. Juan Soto's defense is below average, 100%. But he is not worth all that money because of a glove. Nobody is. The best players get big money because of their bat. The glove is secondary. Now, if the glove is damn good, that's a bonus. But let's not make no mistake about it. There is no team that is going to shy away from giving any player of value, say a top 5 free agent, let's say position player. They're not going to sign him because of his glove. It just doesn't happen. Sorry, it doesn't. Manny Ramirez was a terrible outfielder. Why do you think he got big contracts? Because he can hit. Many players couldn't catch at all, were bad fielders, below average fielders. But because they had a good bat, they had great years with the bat, they get paid. And Frank, you can use Juan Soto as a DH from time to time. But there's the reason why you traded for Jose Siri as an elite defender, because he can patrol most of right center that Juan Soto cannot. And when you have an elite center fielder in Jose Siri, Juan Soto isn't going to be to make a break defensively as a lot of people thought. Because now Juan Soto only has to worry about the right field line and his area in right field. He doesn't have to concern himself about right center because Jose Siri is in the 99th percentile of defense. He is a gap-to-gap defender. He patrols the left field gap and the right field gap better than anybody in baseball. Don't think that David Stern's trade for Jose Siri wasn't related to the possibility of signing Juan Soto and his below average defense. This all relates. And what's even interesting about Juan Soto, again, he takes bad routes to balls. We all understand that. But he was top 5 in throwing runners out at base paths. He was one of the best, even though he doesn't have an elite arm in regards to analytics, even though he doesn't have the strongest arm, doesn't have the most accurate arm. But he's top 5 in throwing runners out. So he's bad with routes his routes to the ball. If he gets there, he catches it. Right? I think we could talk a lot about Bader and Tyrone Taylor and what they did to help Starling Marte. Because Marte was very scary in right field. He had a hard time going to the right center field gap. But when you have Tyrone Taylor and Harrison Bader, tracking down those balls in right center, Marte didn't have to worry about balls in right center more often than not. He only had to worry about going back on balls, his regular position in right field, and the line. So to talk about Juan Soto's glove makes me believe that you don't want to look at the 95% of positives Juan Soto brings to the team. We all talked about it throughout the whole postseason. The Yankees didn't deserve to be in the World Series. They weren't the best. They weren't a very good all-around team. Yet they got to the World Series because, remember, Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton has been a part of this team since 2017. 2018. They have not made the World Series when Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge were on the same team. Juan Soto comes in for 1 year. They get to the World Series. Don't think that's not a major impact on a team. Juan Soto is a winner. Juan Soto makes your team drastically better. Juan Soto basically dragged the Yankees into the World Series. So to think that Juan Soto is not worth that money, it's not just what's on the field. He brings an aura. He brings a confidence. He brings a winning mentality to an organization. That is priceless, guys. Priceless. And especially that he's a position player, because the Mets in years past, right? Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, they brought pitchers that help you every 5th day. But when you have a guy like Juan Soto who helps you almost every single day, and he impacts the game every single day, if it's with the bat, if it's with just the presence in the lineup, that is so valuable that Yankee fans sniffed it for 1 year. When you watch a guy every day, now Mets fans, we've seen Juan Soto more often than not as a national. When Yankee fans really haven't got a glimpse of him, they've seen him in the Padres and the National, every now and then. But when you play a team 19 times a year like the Mets did the Nationals, and Juan Soto was a part of it, he impacted the game, seemed like every single time. Even if he went 0 for 4, seems like he impacted the game somehow. So until you have him on your team, and I've watched enough Yankee games throughout the season this year, Juan Soto makes a damn difference on a team that probably barely should have get out of the second round. That's how important Juan Soto is to a team. At 19 years old, he pushed the Nationals to a World Series. Look at his postseason numbers. They're outstanding. That's a guy that puts up outstanding numbers in the season, but when it comes to the postseason, finds another level. That's what you want. That's what you need. That's how you win in the postseason. Remember that, guys. And some interesting news that came out today, as the Angels just have been rolling out, and they've been spending money this year, guys. The White Sox, I'm sorry, the White Sox, the Angels, excuse me, the Angels took off one of the pitching free agents on the market in Yusei Kikuchi, getting $21 million a year for Yusei Kikuchi. 3 years, $63 million, guys. Listen, I said this, and I don't think a lot of people believed, but pitching was going to be damn expensive. And a guy who had a 4.05 ERA this year got $21 million a year. $21 million a year. Now, why is that important to talk about? Because the Mets have free agent pitchers like Sean Manaea, like Luis Severino. I think we can all agree had better seasons than Yusei Kikuchi. Specifically, Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea is seeing dollar signs in his sleep right now. Because for Sean Manaea, who is an ace of a staff, basically pitching like a Cy Young from probably the last 4 months of the season, is going to probably get between $25 and $26 million a year for Sean Manaea. And you would think Severino would probably get around $22, $23 million a year. So for everybody who wants Sean Manaea, who might want Severino, or who really wants Corbin Burns, if Yusei Kikuchi and Sean Manaea can get between $21 and $26 million, what do you think Corbin Burns is going to get? He's going to get probably closer to $40 million than you think. He probably will get between $32 and $35 million a year. Interesting, right? Very, very interesting. So a thing to look at when it comes to Kikuchi and why it's important to the New York Mets is because the Mets have two guys in their rotation at this point, and that is David Peterson and Kodai Senga. They got to fill rotation spots. Even if they do trade for one of the top pitchers, they're going to have to still probably sign two more pitchers, even if they're not at the caliber of Corbin Burns. Even if they want to bring back Sean Manaea or bring back Luis Severino, it's going to cost you over $21 million probably. Because I think we all can agree Severino Manaea had better seasons than Yusei Kikuchi, and Yusei Kikuchi is taking $21 million a year over the next 3 years to the bank. So it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be very expensive. And why I said when I was talking about prospects and trading for a pitcher like Garrett Crochet or Luis Castillo is more likely than signing Corbin Burns to a massive deal worth probably between $35 to $37 million per year over a 10-year period. Right? You trade for Garrett Crochet, he's going to be less expensive even if you extend him than the top pitcher on the market, Corbin Burns. Garrett Crochet might not even cost you $200 million if you extend him because you're buying out his last 2 arbitration years, and that's going to save the team some money. So you might be able to give him a 6-year deal for $190 or a 7-year deal for $190 instead of giving Corbin Burns $250 million, $275 million over a 10-year deal or over a 6-7-year deal. It can save you between $50 and $60 million on an overall contract. And that's where you have to understand why I keep on saying there's a pretty good chance the Mets trade for a top-line starter, then give all that money to Corbin Burns, because that's more money, even after you sign Juan Soto, that you can sign back a Sean Manaea or bring back a Luis Severino or another middle of the pack, a number 3 type of starter for $18 to $20 million. So it's going to be very interesting. I was shocked when I heard that news that the Angels gave $21 million to Kikuchi for 3 years. Or 3 years, $63 million. Now, everybody can talk about, it's an overpay, but the overpay is still a contract. The overpay now makes other players like Sean Manaea, like Luis Severino, among others who probably have better seasons than Kikuchi, going to teams saying, I'm better than this guy. I deserve more. So even though we probably think it's an overpay, doesn't matter to the agents of those players that have pitchers that were better than Yusei Kikuchi. So they're going to get more. Manaea is going to get more. And Manaea was a hell of a lot better than Yusei Kikuchi. So you would think he would get between $3 to $5 million more than what Kikuchi got, which is around $24 to $26 million. And if you're willing to do that over 3 or 4 years with Sean Manaea, well, I don't mind having Sean Manaea back. But are you willing to spend 20 in the mid-20s for a number 3 starter? Because if you do trade for a Garrett Crochet or Luis Castillo, they're clearly going to be your number 1, or even sign Corbin Burns, they're clearly going to be your number 1. So, and Kodai Senga is your number 2. So, are you willing to pay mid-20s for a number 3 pitcher? I don't know if David Stearns is going to do that. So that's why the Yusei Kikuchi and why I brought it up is so important to the Mets, because it raises the prices of guys, specifically left-handed starters on the market, especially free agent market, that are looking at that and saying, I'm better than this guy. Sean Manaea is going to walk into any team's office and say, I was much better than Sean. I was much better than Yusei Kikuchi. I did it in New York. I did it in the big stage. I did it in the postseason. I'm worth at least $4 million, $5 million more. Well, easy. Well, then you're not getting them then. So now you're going to lead to overpaying for, like, the Mets overpaid for Severino last offseason. $13 million was an overpay for Severino, for a guy who had the worst stats in his career, and the Mets gave him $13 million. That was an extreme overpay. And ended up working out, but at the moment, it was an overpay. Even though I liked the move, it was an overpay. Walker Buehler, right? Explosive. I was just going to bring him up. Walker Buehler, came back later in the season, but had a really good postseason. This is the guy where I think David Stearns might look at more than a Severino, even over Manaea. Because you might get him on a 1-year deal, maybe a similar deal than the Mets gave Manaea, where it's a 2-year deal with a player opt-out after the second year. So if Buehler has a big year after his second, the second year after Tommy John, he can opt out. You could do that. And you can easily, still sign Corbin Burns or trade for a Garrett Crochet or Luis Castillo. And now you got your 1, 2, 3, and now you only got to worry about either your 4 or 5 right now, because David Peterson is going to be one of those pitchers. That's a way to go as well. Yeah, meanwhile, I understand that, but the high AAV is nice, but these pitchers are looking for security, right? I guarantee you Manaea is probably looking for 4 years. Severino is probably looking for 3 with the possibility of a 4th year. I'm willing to give $25, $26 million to Manaea over 3 years. I think, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as he was last year, but if he's solid, I'm okay with that. But you can't have, in my opinion, if you have Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea as your 1-2, I don't think that's as good as everybody thinks it's going to be. I'm sorry. I don't trust Kodai Senga, and I don't believe Sean Manaea can be as good as he was last year. And even if he is, do we trust Kodai Senga to come back healthy and pitch the way we saw him 2 years ago? How do we know that when we haven't seen it? That's concerning to me. That's why I believe it's either going to be Corbin Burns, Garrett Crochet, or Luis Castillo at the front of this Mets rotation. I mean, they could sign Nestor Cortez, but he better be like a number 5. I don't mind that. You see, everybody just goes crazy thinking that your number 4 and number 5 pitchers are got to be really damn good pitchers. When you look throughout baseball, the majority of them fucking suck. It's a fact. Right? Go look throughout the rotations in baseball, guys. Look at the number 4 and number 5 starters. Every one of them have an ERA over 4.5. Maybe a little bit below that, but most of them are 4.5 ERA type pitchers or more. So if you can give me a Nestor Cortez who can throw you a gem every now and then, but will give you innings if need be, he might give up 3 to 4 runs a game. But as long as you come out of that game giving your team a chance to win, that's success when it comes to a number 4 and number 5 starter. So I'm okay with Nestor Cortez, but he better be the 5th starter, or better be, the 6th starter if the Mets go to a 6-man rotation. So Nate Eovaldi, yeah, but I don't see Nate Eovaldi. If we sign Nate Eovaldi and that's our big pitching free agent, I'm sorry, I'm not confident in that. How are you confident with Eovaldi and Senga as your 1-2? Because I'm not. Now, if it's Eovaldi with a Burns or a Crochet with Kodai Senga, now we're talking. If you can trickle in a Walker Buehler for a 1-year deal, maybe with a second-year option, now we're really talking. So we'll see. We will see, but it'll be very interesting. I want to go back to the non-tender players to watch, and a guy that me and Chris talked about in Kyle Finnegan. We were talking about closers that are either on the market, free agent wise, or potentially in trades. We thought Kyle Finnegan was going to be a possible trade. Well, the Nationals non-tendered him. Now he's a free agent. I wouldn't be shocked if you see the Mets go heavily after Kyle Finnegan, and that would be a really good addition to the bridge to Diaz, as Kyle Finnegan can be your 8th-inning guy into Diaz. And when Diaz is not available, Finnegan can be available to close, as he done with the Nationals for the last couple of seasons. So Kyle Finnegan is a guy to watch out for if you're the New York Mets. I'd sign him in a heartbeat. 100%. I know he's in his he's like 30, 33, 34 years old. Still got a lively on, still a really damn good pitcher. Put him as your 8 guy. Now you have a bridge to Diaz, a confident bridge to Diaz. And that's possibly if you bring back Stanek and, a couple of other guys. Now you're talking about, a 6, 7, 8, 9 where you're comfortable with now, which the Mets have not really had over the last couple of seasons, and it's been frustrating. But now, Kyle Finnegan is available just for money. And why not? You could do a lot worse than Kyle Finnegan, who's had really good seasons as the closer of the Washington Nationals. Bring him in, put him as your 8th-inning guy, and you're good to go. Now you got 2 closers at the back end of your rotation. Any given moment, anytime there's a save and Diaz is not available, you don't have to struggle to find who can pitch the 9th inning for you to save a ball game. You got Kyle Finnegan. And when Finnegan's not available, Diaz is available. It'll be very rare when Finnegan and Diaz are not available, but it's rare. And that's what I like about that. Finnegan is a guy I definitely would like to look at as a guy for the Mets to sign and put in that 8th inning role. Yeah, and a guy like there's a couple of guys. I know guys that you're talking about Poche, you're talking about Webb. Yeah, other good guys as well, and cost effective as well. Clay Holmes is another guy who was the closer for the Yankees. He lost his job as closer, but for the Mets to sign Clay Holmes, I don't want to. Now, again, there might be a team out there that would want Clay Holmes to be their closer, and he could get closer money. But if he doesn't get that, I bring in Clay Holmes as like a 7th inning guy, 6th inning guy. But obviously, he's going to probably look for closer money, as he did it at the biggest stage as a Yankee, even though he got kicked out of his position later in the year, this year. He might try to look to get for closer money, and that's going to be also very interesting to watch out for. But Stearns, he knows what he's doing with the bullpen. Every time he ran a team, his bullpen, his pitching was always in the top 5 of ERAs. We're always one of the better pitching staffs in baseball. Let him work. I trust David Stearns to do that. And last but not least, the final topic of the day is that there's been reports that the Phillies are willing to trade Alec Bohm, which I'm not shocked about. Alec Bohm is the guy that has had some success with the Phillies, has had some issues with the Phillies. And, the Phillies are trying to get better, and they're trying to add to their pitching staff behind Zach Wheeler. Because after Zach Wheeler, we've seen it in the playoffs. After Zach Wheeler, it was basically a crapshoot for the Phillies. They're trying to get Garrett Crochet. And if you heard the GM of the White Sox, he says he wants ready major league position players and maybe even prospects to their total package for Garrett Crochet. Alec Bohm right away can fit into third base for the White Sox. they were talking about Crawford, one of the Phillies' top prospects, in that deal as well for Garrett Crochet. Now, this is the reason why Mets fans have to be a little bit willing to trade prospects for Garrett Crochet, because what you don't want is the Mets don't make an attempt to trade for Garrett Crochet and you let the Phillies get him. Now you got to worry about Zach Wheeler and Garrett Crochet back to back for the next couple of years, where a guy like Garrett Crochet you could have had, but you weren't willing to trade prospects, and now you let him go to your division rival. That's the other issue with the Garrett Crochet situation. You don't want him to go to a division rival, because now you got to face him more often. Not good for the Mets. That's why I'm continuing to stay. I think the Mets are going to go, in that Mania range, that Severino range, Evaldi range, Bueller range, and trade for Garrett Crochet. I think they're going to trade for Garrett Crochet and work the rest of their rotation around either a Mania, a Bueller, Evaldi, like that. Because you take away, because I don't think the Phillies are going to spend $250+ million on Burns to add to their rotation. Garrett Crochet, again, is going to be cheaper, even if you buy out his arbitration years and extend him. So watch out for the Phillies here. And that's why because I can guarantee you the same Mets fans that don't want to trade prospects, if the Phillies trade for Garrett Crochet, those same Mets fans are going to bitch and moan that the Phillies got Garrett Crochet, but they're the same fans that didn't want to trade prospects. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't be afraid to trade prospects for Crochet and then bitch and moan that the Phillies got him. You can't do that. That's why I said it's more likely the Mets get Garrett Crochet and fill out their rotation with guys like Walker Bueller, Evaldi, Mania, Severino, those combination of guys, along with Garrett Crochet at the top of the rotation, then you're more likely to sign Corbin Burns, because you think it's more likely that the Mets sign Corbin Burns and add another $60 million per year between Mania and Evaldi, or Mania and Bueller combined over the contracts. I don't see that happen. I think it's more likely that they trade for a top pitcher and then sign those other guys to fill out the rotation. It's more financially, understandable, especially if you go after Juan Soto, especially if you bring back an Alonso. So remember, guys, Greg, when it comes to Kirby and Gilbert, I don't think they're going to get traded from Seattle. I think if you're going to look at those type of pitchers, it's more likely Luis Castillo gets traded. Why? Because Kirby and Gilbert are still controllable, are still cheap. Luis Castillo is owed a ton of money. If the Mariners want to shed payroll, they're not going to get rid of those two guys, because it's not financially, it doesn't make sense for them. Yeah, they can get a lot back for them, but they're not lowering payroll to do that. They're probably going to add payroll. And if they're serious about trying to get Pete Alonso or trying to get, another position player of high value, they're going to have to lower their payroll a little bit. And Luis Castillo makes the most sense. So Kirby and Gilbert, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Castillo is an option, a trade candidate for Seattle to lower payroll and get something back in return, as well as lower payroll. So once again, guys, Kikuchi with the Angels, 3 years, $63 million, $21 million a year. Why is that important? Because that raised the prices of guys like Mania and Severino and other pitchers that the Mets might be going after in free agency. So pitching is expensive, and it's even more expensive right after the Kikuchi signing, 3 years, $63 million. Watch out for the Phillies-White Sox trade talks. Alec Bohm is on the trade block. The Phillies are willing to trade one of their top prospects in Crawford. That's exactly what the GM of the White Sox have been looking for. And I say this to end the stream. Mets fans, if you're not willing to trade top prospects for a guy like Garrett Crochet, remember, if he becomes a Philly, don't bitch that he's a Philly and then bitch about top prospects. You can't have it both ways. So I don't want to face Garrett Crochet in the NL East for the next 5 to 6 years. I just don't want to do that. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and beat out your division rival for that pitcher. Sometimes you have to do it. We'll see if that happens, guys. Look out for that. Trade talks. Look out for the high price pitching free agents that the money just went up for all pitching free agents because of the Kikuchi sign-in. Non-tender news. Alex Ramirez, one of the Mets' top 10 prospects at one point, was the 26th ranked prospect before he's out of the organization, was non-tendered by the Mets. We'll see what the Mets have coming this offseason. According to the reports, offers will be flying into Juan Soto this week. We'll see if that news starts to pop out a little bit and offers start to get trickled out and known. And then we have a lot to talk about. So, guys, thank you for tuning in to episode 8 of Mets Hot Stove running solo today as Chris is on vacation during the holidays. He will be back within a week or so, and we'll both have Mets Hot Stove ready to go for both of our channels. So with that said, guys, have a great night. I'll probably do another Mets Hot Stove probably right before Thanksgiving. So, but if we don't, make sure you have a good Thanksgiving, guys. Be safe. Happy holidays, guys, and I'll see you next time on Mets Hot Stove. Let's go Mets, guys, and have a great night.
Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, round-table podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets.
City lights in the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, trees bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine.